My parents told me I had to attend my perfect sister's wedding or they would kick me out of the house. They said she was perfect. I was just there. Every family dinner, every school award. Heather always took center stage. I used to count how many times my name was mentioned at the table. Most nights, the tally stayed at 0. Tonight was no different. I slipped in through the side door of our suburban house, the hinges creaking faintly like they were whispering a warning. My backpack hung heavy on one shoulder, still damp at the strap from where the air conditioning at the library had soaked through my sleeve. The job was mindless, reshelving books, helping toddlers find picture books with dinosaurs. But it was quiet, peaceful, unlike this place. Mom was setting down plates in the dining room, eyes focused somewhere on the wall, like always. Dad sat at the head of the table, his fork already in hand. Heather's face beamed out from the giant framed photo behind him. Her graduation portrait, teeth blindingly white, eyes full of ambition. No one greeted me when I entered. "Madison, wash your hands and sit," Dad said without looking up. I did. I always did. Dinner started with the usual. Dad talking, Mom nodding, me shrinking. Tonight it was wedding talk. Heather's wedding, to be specific. Venue choices, guest lists, the perfect shade of lavender for the bridesmaids' dresses. All decided without the input of the one other daughter at the table. Her fiancé's mother thinks the outdoor vineyard is too rustic, Dad said, scoffing. But Heather's standing firm. I respect that. Of course, Mom murmured, barely above a whisper. My fork hovered over a soggy green bean. I'm not sure if I'll go. Silence. It dropped so fast, the temperature in the room might as well have plummeted 10 degrees. Mom's eyes flicked down to her plate. Her fingers tightened around her glass of water. She didn't say anything. Dad looked at me. Not just looked. Pierced. "You're going," he said flatly. "I just don't see why." "You're going," he repeated. "No choice." I swallowed. The green bean slid down my throat like a stone. I looked at Mom again, hoping for something. A flicker of concern, a hesitation, but all I saw was the side of her face and the way her mouth pressed into a line. "I didn't ask for much growing up," I said, my voice low. "I just want to feel like I'm not invisible." That was when he said it. "If you don't go," Dad said, setting his fork down with a quiet clang, "you can move out of the house." No one flinched. No one defended me. Not even Mom. I bit my lip. In my head I heard, "Noted." Very well. Heather once stole my prom dress. My parents called it a misunderstanding. My sister just borrowed it. That's what they said. Every time, like theft, betrayal, or humiliation could be softened into something forgivable by the word borrowed. It wasn't the first time. Not even the worst. Years before the dress, I was 14. My birthday had come and gone without a party. Just a half-hearted cake and a card Dad signed without reading. That night, I had shown Mom a short story I had written. I poured everything into that piece. It was about a girl who lived in the attic of a house full of people who forgot she was alive. The metaphor wasn't subtle, but neither was the silence I was born into. Mom skimmed it, her eyes flitting across the words like she was searching for typos instead of feelings. "She's been reading too much fantasy," Dad said from the couch. Heather snatched the paper from Mom's hands. "What is this? Some orphan melodrama?" "Give it back," I said, hand out. But she laughed and ripped it in half. I remember the sound. I still hear it sometimes when I crumple receipts. "She didn't mean it," Dad said when I stood frozen, fists clenched. "She's just joking around." "She's just joking around," became a refrain. Like when she joined the creative writing club at school, using my name. I only found out when the faculty advisor told me it was disappointing. I hadn't shown up for a single meeting. I didn't argue. What would be the point? By then, I had learned to fold into myself like paper. Words went into my notebook instead of my mouth. I started carrying it everywhere. My own secret sanctuary. It had a red fabric cover and slightly torn corners. Inside, story fragments, letters I'd never send, revenge fantasies too petty to say aloud. One time, Heather said my poetry was too dark and told Mom I needed help. Mom told her to stop teasing. Then she added, "But maybe tone it down, sweetie." To me, just in case. They all called me sensitive. Maybe I was. Sensitive enough to remember everything. I remember the week of finals in sophomore year. I got top marks in English. I left the report card on the kitchen table, hoping someone, anyone, would notice. That night, Dad asked me if I'd taken out the trash. The next day, Heather got a B+ in chemistry and they took her out to dinner. I didn't eat that night. The notebooks got fuller. Then came the question. I don't even remember what triggered it. Probably another dinner where I was ignored while Heather showed off a new dress. Probably mine. I was 12, maybe 13. I looked up at Mom as she washed dishes. If I disappeared, I asked quietly, would you recognize me? She paused. Her hand, wet and sudsy, reached out and landed on my shoulder. 2 seconds. Then it withdrew like I was too much heat. Or not enough. Mom didn't answer. Just put her hand on my shoulder, then pulled it back after 2 seconds. I wasn't invited to help with the wedding. I was assigned. A text came the night before. Come to the boutique at 11. Bring your phone. You'll take pictures. No greeting. No, please. Just an order from Heather, like always. Everyone in the family had a role. Mom helped plan the reception, Dad was managing the finances, and Heather, of course, was the radiant centerpiece. I was the unpaid janitor, the background fixture to be used when convenient and ignored when not. The boutique was every shade of ivory and arrogance. Plush carpets swallowed footsteps, and the staff wore black like they were attending a funeral. Maybe mine. Heather was already on the platform when I arrived, twirling in a strapless gown with too many crystals. Mom clapped her hands like a child seeing snow for the first time. Madison, Heather said without looking at me. Use portrait mode this time. Try not to crop out my waist. She didn't even say hello. I raised the phone like a weapon, pointing it at her. The screen framed her perfectly. Make sure it's from the angle that makes me look taller, she added. You know how to use a phone, right? My silence was my answer. I snapped the photo, then another, then 3 more. Gorgeous, Mom beamed. You've gotten thinner. You'll look perfect by July. She didn't even glance in my direction, not to say hi, not to ask if I'd eaten. I might as well have been the hanger holding the dress. Behind them, the boutique door chimed. Zoe stepped in. Unexpected, out of place in her torn jeans and army jacket. She paused, eyes scanning the room, then smiled when she saw me. Hey, Madison, she said. Madison, not the photographer, not her. Just my name. A single syllable that felt like a rope tossed to a drowning person. Heather frowned. You brought someone? I didn't, I started, but Zoe shrugged and waved. Was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd say hi. Heather turned back to the mirror. Well, you can see how busy we are. Zoe gave me a look. The kind that said, you okay? I wasn't, but I nodded. Then it happened. Mom adjusted the veil on Heather's head and said, softly but clearly, after the wedding, you'll be given the investment assets. You deserve it. You've always had the family taste. Family taste. Not hard work, not merit, just taste. It slipped out of Heather's mouth next, carelessly like a crumb of cake. Yeah, Dad said it'll all be transferred once I'm settled. Finally, one less thing to argue about. Transferred. I lowered the phone. What? I asked. Heather blinked like she'd forgotten I could speak. Oh, nothing. Just adult stuff. I stared at her, then Mom. Neither met my gaze. I turned away, clutching the phone like it might crack from the pressure in my palm. Outside, I stepped into the sun and dialed Zoe. It rang once, twice. And for the first time, I found myself unable to stay silent. "You're not mad, right? It's your sister's big day." I heard the words but couldn't tell who said them. They drifted in from somewhere to my left. Maybe Aunt Clarice, maybe someone from Jason's side. They all wore the same syrupy smiles, as if sweetness could cover the taste of rot. How many times have they made me swallow my anger in silence, just because my sister deserves it? The restaurant was dressed like a wedding cake. White linen everywhere, candles flickering on crystal stems, and that faint scent of vanilla that clung to overpriced decor. This was the pre-wedding dinner. Just a little gathering to bring the families together. A rehearsal of happiness. I didn't have a seat at the main table. I was placed at the edge next to the coat rack, with a chair that wobbled. Jason entered late, exactly the way he used to in high school. Unhurried, confident, like he already knew the ending to the story. My stomach clenched before my mind caught up. Heather practically glowed when she saw him. Her hands flew up, clapping, her voice chiming, "He's here." All eyes turned. He grinned, adjusted his cufflinks, and headed to the table. Mom stood to greet him with a hug. Dad gave a firm handshake, then a toast. I sat still. He was taller now, leaner, but that lazy smile hadn't changed. He moved to sit beside Heather, who grabbed his arm and tilted her head just so. "I told you all," she began, raising her voice just enough. "We met on the first day of sophomore year. He was this lost transfer student, and I gave him a tour of the campus. That's how it all started." Laughter. Clinks of glasses. A lie. Jason was in my history class. He used to borrow my notes. Every Monday. I remember because I used to fold tiny corners on the pages, hoping he'd notice. Once, he wrote a thank you with a tiny smiley face. I tore that page out and kept it. He never looked at Heather then, but he was looking at her now. Heather glanced my way once. Just once. And smiled. A warning, stay quiet. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. Zoe. Zoe. You okay? I didn't answer. My fingers hovered, then locked the screen. As the plates were cleared, I stood to help without being asked. No one stopped me. They never did. I might as well have worn a server's uniform. Jason walked guests out one by one, his hand firm on their backs, charming them into goodbye. Then I heard it. "I didn't expect to see you here, Maddie." I froze, a stack of salad plates in my hand. He was beside me now, close enough for the scent of his cologne to pull memories I didn't want. I turned. Neither did I. My voice came out even, and I held his gaze. I didn't drop it. Not until he blinked first. Later, in my room, I didn't write in the notebook. I opened the voice recorder on my phone. "Day 1, I whispered. "Let's try something different." My childhood felt like a courtroom. Heather always had the better lawyer. That summer, the air smelled like honeysuckle and betrayal. I was 12, still in that fragile space where dreams felt possible. Like becoming a writer, living in a house where people actually listened to one another. Maybe even being seen. I spent my afternoons under the oak tree in the backyard, scribbling in my notebook, imagining an alternate life where fairness existed. And then came the necklace. It wasn't just any necklace. It was a gift from Grandma, an old silver chain with a tiny locket. She gave it to me on my birthday with trembling fingers and a whisper. "This belonged to my sister. Take care of it." I kept it in a velvet pouch, hidden inside a drawer beneath my socks. I never wore it. I didn't want to lose it. One morning, it was gone. I searched everywhere. I even checked the washing machine, thinking maybe it fell into the laundry. My room looked like a storm had passed through by the time I gave up. 2 nights later, Heather walked into the kitchen. She was dressed for prom, glowing under the chandelier. And there it was, my necklace, resting against her collarbone like it belonged. "I found it in the yard," she said casually, sipping from a pink straw. I remember blinking, waiting for someone, anyone, to say something. Mom's mouth twitched like she might speak, but Dad stepped in first. "It's your sister's now. Don't be selfish. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Heather didn't even flinch. She adjusted the clasp and smiled. Mom stayed silent. She always stayed silent. Later that night, I stood in the doorway, holding the velvet pouch in one hand and my notebook in the other. She always takes things, I said, the words tasting like metal. No one listens to you. I added quietly, almost to myself. Dad didn't even look up from his paper. Because you only whine, he said, then turned the page. The rest of the night blurred. I went back to my room and tore the diary page I'd written that day, ripped it right down the middle. My small hands shaking, heart pounding. But as the pieces fluttered to the floor, something inside me panicked. I gathered them up, smoothed out the creases, and glued them back together with tape. The lines didn't match perfectly, and the ink had smudged where my tears had landed. Still, I placed it back in the notebook. I wanted to remember, because if no one else ever would, then at least I'd have the truth, written, taped, and underlined in my own words. Heather texted, "Don't wear anything weird to the wedding, thanks." The message lit up my phone screen like a flare in the dark, searing and casual, the way only Heather could do. Controlling, dressed up as care. I stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering. Then I locked the screen and threw the phone on my pillow. Late June, humid and still. The small lamp on my desk buzzed faintly above the sound of the ceiling fan. Outside, the neighborhood had gone quiet. No lawnmowers, no laughter, no barking dogs. Just me, awake, watching words dig into my chest. Don't wear anything weird. It wasn't the first time. I pulled my old notebook from the bottom drawer, the one I hadn't opened in over a year. Its spine was frayed, ink bleeding from the edges. Every page inside held pieces of me, my rage, my quietness, my hope that someone, someday, would see what was written. But tonight, I didn't pick up my pen. I opened my laptop instead. My fingers hovered above the keys. Then, slowly, they moved. This is for the girl they never saw. I didn't realize I was crying until Zoe's name popped up on my screen. A video call. I wiped my face quickly and answered. Her face flickered to life, framed by fairy lights and a half-eaten bowl of cereal. "You look like you just found out the world's ending." I shrugged, voice hoarse. Heather sent me another message. Zoe rolled her eyes. "Let me guess. Don't embarrass the family, right?" "Close," I said, cracking the faintest smile. She leaned closer to the screen, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "Are you going to let them bury you alive in silence again, Mads?" I didn't answer. Instead, I turned my laptop toward her and pointed at the blinking cursor. She raised her eyebrows. "You're writing it." "I think I am." "Read me the first line." I hesitated, then whispered, "This is for the girl they never saw." Zoe leaned back and exhaled, slow and steady. "Solid. Strong opener, keep going. No filter." I nodded. My fingers moved again, almost without me. Paragraph after paragraph came out in pieces, memories stitched with sharpness and clarity. The dress, the necklace, Jason's notebook, the erasure, over and over again. Zoe listened. She didn't interrupt, except once, to ask if I wanted a real grade. I laughed. For real this time. When the call ended, it was past midnight. The air in the room felt different. Charged. I stood and walked to the mirror above my dresser. I had on an oversized t-shirt, hair tied in a loose knot, no makeup. Same face, same eyes. But something had shifted. I tilted my chin up. For the first time, I saw someone who could speak for me. Me. The day before the wedding, I was invisible. Until I said no. It was humid and stale inside the house, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I stood in the kitchen, washing a chipped mug, when Heather waltzed in wearing satin shorts and a smug expression. Her phone was in one hand, her iced latte in the other. "Hey, Mads," she chirped, too sweet. "Can you go pick up Aunt Carol from the airport tomorrow?" No one else is free. I dried my hands on the towel slowly. I already have work. She blinked, just once. It's Aunt Carol. I know, but I have work. For a second, silence filled the room. Then footsteps. Dad came in, newspaper folded under his arm, eyes darting between us. What's this? Heather needs Madison to pick up Aunt Carol. She's refusing, Mom said from the dining table, not even looking up. Refusing. Like I'd just slammed a door in their face. I already scheduled a shift, I said again, calm. I can't skip. Dad's jaw tensed. We all make sacrifices for this family. You think your little job matters more than your sister's wedding? It's not little, I replied. It pays for my rent next month. Heather let out a theatrical sigh, walking to the fridge like this was all exhausting. It's always something with you, isn't it? And that was it. The moment. Something inside me uncoiled. Maybe I learned from the best, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it landed like glass on tile. Dad's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? You've always taught me to look out for myself, so I'm doing that. Mom finally looked up, her face unreadable. Heather leaned against the fridge, sipping her latte like she was above it all. You're bitter, Dad muttered. No, I said. I'm done being quiet. The room froze. Even the ticking of the wall clock sounded sharp. My phone buzzed. A message from Zoe. You okay? Still breathing? I didn't reply. Just kept my gaze on Heather, who now approached slowly. She stopped a few feet away, tilted her head and smiled. Not wide, but calculated. Remember? She said, her voice low and even. Who holds your right to survive in this house? I didn't flinch. But somewhere deep inside I knew she wasn't wrong. Not yet. But that wouldn't last. I didn't dress to impress. I dressed to remember who I am. The garden was drenched in sunlight, every flower preened for the occasion, white ribbons curling in the breeze like smug little grins. The guests, all in pastels and pearls, clustered around linen-covered tables, sipping champagne, murmuring with polite anticipation. And then I walked in. Black dress, square neckline, simple heels. Hair pinned up in a loose bun, a few strands falling to frame my face. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. But the whispers began. That's Madison, right? Didn't even recognize her. Is she in black? Aunt Carol turned to her husband, eyes wide. That's Madison? The little girl who used to hide behind the piano? Heather was across the lawn, surrounded by her bridesmaids in tulle and tan smiles. She turned, probably expecting a server or another relative offering compliments. Her smile faltered. Jason stood at her side. But when he saw me, he actually took a step forward. For a moment, we just looked at each other. The noise of the party faded like someone had turned down the volume dial. You look, he said, unsure. Nothing like I remember. I held his gaze. That's the point. He blinked, and in that silence, I felt something shift. Not just in him, but in me. Heather quickly recovered, slipping her hand into Jason's and whispering something in his ear. His eyes didn't leave mine. I walked past them both. A server offered me champagne. I took a glass but didn't sip. My hands weren't trembling. For the first time in years, they were steady. Across the lawn, Zoe stood at the edge of the crowd. She raised her phone, texted, "You're a damn phoenix." I allowed myself the smallest smirk, then reached into my purse. Inside, a USB, silver, slim, tucked next to a folded page of printed text. My article, never published, once submitted under Heather's name. Miss Madison. The party coordinator jogged up, clipboard in hand, cheeks flushed. Your speech. Are you ready? All heads turned. I nodded once. Yes, I'm ready. When they handed me the mic, I knew I wasn't just speaking, I was reclaiming. The garden fell into a hush as I walked up the stage. Rows of white chairs, crystal glasses clinking, sunlight glinting off lenses and phones lifted to capture what they thought would be a simple toast. I smiled. A quiet, deliberate one. I want to thank everyone for coming, I began, voice steady. And most of all, I want to wish my sister and Jason a lifetime of clarity. A few soft chuckles. Heather tilted her head. Jason stood behind her, unreadable. I've been asked to say a few words, I continued. Not just about love, but about family, legacy, and truth. So I'll begin with a story. The laughter stilled. Somewhere in the crowd, a child coughed. There once was a girl, I said, pacing slowly, who wrote songs in her notebook, who stayed late at school to help others, who applied for every scholarship because she knew no one would help her. And then, one day, her name disappeared. My eyes scanned the crowd. Whispers. She was told it was a system error, a misunderstanding, that the award she earned just happened to go to her sister. The same sister who signed up for the music club using her name. The same sister who wore her grandmother's necklace to prom and called it found. Heather's smile had cracked. My father's face turned red. My mother wasn't breathing. Some say, I said, pausing, that silence is graceful, that it's better not to stir trouble. I looked down at the USB in my hand, then walked to the podium and plugged it in. The screen flickered once, then bloomed with color. A photo appeared. Heather at a music showcase standing under a banner that read, Finalist, Fire in the Quiet, by Heather Ross. My voice cut through the gasps. That song was written by someone else, every note, every lyric. I know because I wrote it. Heather's mouth opened, but no sound came. Jason looked at her. Really looked, and then turned to me. I nodded. I don't say this to ruin a day, I said calmly. I say this to reclaim one. Mine. More murmurs. Some guests shifted in their chairs. One woman whispered, I knew something was off. I glanced down at my notes, then folded the paper and set it aside. No more pages, I said quietly. Then I looked out at the crowd, then back at my sister. Now, you can call that girl by her name. It's Madison. I bowed my head and left the mic behind. No one clapped. No one moved. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of silence. I stepped off the stage and into the garden's narrow side path, heels pressing into damp grass. The air was thick with heat and something else. Judgment, confusion, fear. I welcomed it. Behind me, a door slammed. Heather? My mom's voice started, hushed and panicked. I'll handle it, Heather snapped. I didn't turn until I felt her presence just feet away. You really went all in, she hissed. Do you want to destroy me? I turned to her, my voice calm. I just took back my voice. She blinked. The makeup around her eyes cracked slightly as her expression contorted. That song wasn't even finished, she barked. But it was mine. Footsteps behind us. Jason. He looked between us, his tie loosened, forehead damp. I saw the footage, heard the lyrics. They weren't yours, were they? Heather opened her mouth, then closed it. Jason shifted his eyes to me. I always wondered why your handwriting was on all those sheets I borrowed. Now you know. Heather scoffed. Oh, please. So now what? She wins your sympathy because she writes sob stories? Enough. My mother's voice cut in, trembling as she appeared from behind a rose trellis. This is not the time or the place. People are watching. No one was watching me for 17 years, I said, not moving. Mom stepped forward. Her hand reached for my wrist, then stopped halfway. Let it go, Madison. No one gains anything by making a big deal out of it. My breath caught, and then I laughed, low, bitter. If that's how you taught her, I said, steady now, then I don't want to learn. Silence again. Jason walked closer, holding something, a folded card from the wedding program. He glanced down at it, then back up. "If you wrote that for a contest," he said, voice quieter than before, "you'd win." Heather made a noise between a scoff and a growl. She grabbed the bouquet from the gift table and hurled it to the ground. Petals scattered like broken promises across the concrete. I didn't flinch, just looked up at Jason, nodded once, and walked away. I had nothing left to say. But finally, everything to write. Heather disappeared. But silence wasn't retreating. It was regrouping. The house felt different the next morning. Not quiet. Tight. Like every wall was holding its breath. I woke up late, the sun already sharp through the blinds. I hadn't unpacked my things after the wedding. Maybe I thought I wouldn't have to stay long. Then came the knock. 3 sharp taps. No pause. "Madison," my father said from behind the door. "Come downstairs." The dining table had been cleared. No breakfast. Just 3 cups of coffee. One untouched. My mother stood, arms folded. My father sat with his phone in front of him, screen still glowing. He didn't waste time. "We need to talk about what happened yesterday." My mother jumped in before I could respond. "You're tearing this family apart." I blinked, stunned. I told the truth. "She's your sister," she snapped. "What kind of person does this at someone's wedding?" I stared at them both. The kind who's been invisible in this house for 17 years. Dad leaned back. "Why now? Why not come to us before? Why wait until it explodes in public?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked, "Would you have listened?" They didn't answer. Then came the ding. An email. Loud in the silence. My dad opened it, his eyes narrowing. "It's from Heather." Mom rushed over. He turned the screen. I caught the subject line. Formal complaint. Madison's deliberate attempt to sabotage my marriage. I stepped closer. Heather had written 3 full paragraphs about emotional manipulation, academic envy, stolen attention. She even included a photo from the wedding stage with a caption. "This is what retaliation looks like." My mother gasped. My father rubbed his temples. My voice shook. "She's rewriting everything." "No," he said slowly. "She's responding." Responding. Like this was some fair match. Like I threw the first stone. I walked upstairs, hands trembling. My phone buzzed before I could shut the door. "Zoe. Video call." She didn't even wait for me to say hello. "Are you regretting it?" she asked. I sat down, back against the wall. "Number, but it hurts." "Yes." She nodded, quiet. "It was never going to be clean." I tried to smile. Failed. Before the call ended, she held up a sticky note. "Don't delete what you wrote." I promised I wouldn't. Then, as if the universe had perfect timing, a second buzz came in. New email. From school.office@stclairs.edu. Subject, academic review request, possible fraud. I read it twice, then 3 times. Madison is currently under internal investigation for academic fraud following unverified claims of authorship and defamation. My breath caught. Heather hadn't just responded. She declared war. They taught me to be quiet. I'm learning now to be louder, with proof. The school library was nearly empty. Summer hours meant shorter days, fewer students. But the lights still hummed. The scent of old books and disinfectant still hung in the air. I sat in the farthest corner, behind the last row of computer stations, heart pounding. Zoe had a hoodie pulled over her head, fingers flying across the keyboard like she was defusing a bomb. "Okay," she muttered. "We're in the archived portal." I leaned closer. "Are you sure this is legal?" "Probably not," she said, then added with a grin, "But it's righteous." 3 years ago, I had submitted an original short story to the school's Young Voices competition. It was called The Wallflowers Anthem. I still remembered the last line. "If no one will crown you, grow your own roots." Zoe scrolled fast, then stopped. Found it. Timestamp, March 11th, 9:42 p.m. She opened the file. My words filled the screen. Raw, clumsy, but mine. I didn't realize my eyes were watering until Zoe nudged me. Wait for it, she said. She clicked into another file, uploaded by a different user. Heather, timestamp, March 12th, 12:21 a.m. The title had been changed slightly, the ending revised. But the body of the story? My metaphors, my scars. 3 hours later, Zoe whispered. That's all she waited. I sat back in my chair. She didn't even bother to rewrite most of it. Because she didn't think she had to, Zoe replied. I pulled out my phone, fingers shaking, and messaged the only teacher who had ever looked me in the eye for more than a second. Hi, Miss C. It's Madison. Do you remember the Young Voices entries from 10th grade? The typing dots appeared. I remember. I always thought something felt off. But the administration said not to question it. I'm sorry. I know what it cost you, she added. I closed my eyes. That one sentence hit harder than all the silence I'd ever endured. Zoe zipped the folder on her screen. I'm adding the screenshots, timestamps, metadata, the text thread too. She sent it all to my student email in a PDF titled Exhibit A, Authorship Verification and Timeline of Plagiarism. I reread the document twice, then opened a new draft. To studentreview@estclairs.edu. Subject official filing, academic misconduct appeal. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long moment, then typed, Dear Committee, attached are materials supporting my authorship of a piece submitted under another student's name. My voice had always lived in fiction. Now it was crossing into fact. You can't take someone's future and expect silence forever. The room was too bright. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a kind of sterile glare that made everything, skin, eyes, doubt, look sharper. The long table stretched between us like a moat, separating truth from protocol. I sat with my student lawyer, a second-year law student with too many binders and a steady voice. Zoe was behind me, her knee bouncing beneath the hem of her dress. Across the table, 4 members of the academic board. One typed, one frowned, one watched me too closely. The last one, the chair, folded her hands like she was holding back a sigh. Ms. Madison, she began, you filed a formal appeal, alleging academic plagiarism by another student. Please present your evidence. I swallowed, nodded. My lawyer opened a red folder. Exhibit A, original file submission, time-stamped March 11th, 9:42 p.m., authorship, Madison Blake. She slid the printed version across the table, then another. Exhibit B, a second file, submitted under Heather Blake's name, dated March 12th, 12:21 a.m. Same structure, overlapping phrasing, consistent with copy and paste behavior. Zoe had color-coded the paragraphs. Blue for original, red for duplicates. The board members followed the chart, eyes narrowing as they flipped. Exhibit C, my lawyer continued. A text from former teacher Ms. Cartwright, confirming she had concerns at the time but was pressured to remain silent. She placed the phone with the printed screenshot beside the files. No one spoke. The typing board member broke the silence. This is compelling. The chair remained unmoved. And the accused student? My lawyer's jaw tightened. Has responded through legal counsel. Statement reads, and I quote, the claim is unsubstantiated, the evidence circumstantial, and not sufficiently corroborated to warrant disciplinary action. They pushed over a printed response on embossed letterhead. Clean, sterile, detached. The board reviewed both sides, then came the pause. The chair tapped her pen. We'll now request access to the original file history from the submission server. It may take 24 hours. My heart thudded. I nodded again, too rigid to speak. We stood. I gathered my notes, eyes glazed. I didn't realize Zoe had followed until she touched my arm gently in the hallway. My lawyer leaned in. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. They're starting to believe you. Don't stop now. I didn't answer. Not because I doubted, but because I finally didn't have to. I wasn't just defending my past. I was rewriting it. Zoe's apartment was barely 30 square meters, but tonight, it felt like the nerve center of a quiet revolution. The glow from 3 different screens bathed the room in shades of blue and white. My laptop fan whirred like a heartbeat. Zoe sat cross-legged on the floor, her hair a frizzy halo, eyes darting between tabs. We post in waves. Reddit thread first, Medium article second, Instagram carousel for quick bites. I sipped lukewarm tea and watched the cursor blink in the caption box. My fingers hesitated, then typed. They took my name. My voice. My work. But not anymore. Madison was erased. Zoe nodded. That'll sting. The first post went live at 8:04 p.m. A timeline graphic followed, complete with evidence screenshots. Madison Blake, submission. Heather Blake, plagiarized, stamped, tracked. The upvotes came slowly, then all at once. A comment. This happened to my sister in med school. Another, classic golden child syndrome, stay loud. By 10 p.m., Zoe's inbox pinged. A DM. I'm a local journalist, read your thread. This story matters. Want to talk? No name, just a link to a blog followed by 40,000 people. Zoe looked at me. We hit something. We didn't sleep, just watched it grow. By dawn, the hashtag Madison was erased, trended on 3 platforms. A podcast featured it in their morning episode, Justice in Academia, One Student's Story. My hands trembled, but not from fear. I refreshed my inbox. New message. Subject, take it down. From Heather Blake. Body, or I will. I stared at the screen, pulse steady, then clicked archive. Let her see what it feels like. To be unheard. The moment they try to silence you is the moment you know you're winning. The blinds in the student legal office were half drawn, slicing the afternoon light into measured lines across the desk. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed third-year named Camille, scrolled silently through the email Heather's attorney had just sent. Beside her, my own hands rested stiff on my lap, every muscle tight. Defamation? Zoe's voice crackled through the Zoom speaker. Seriously? Camille didn't look up. Petition to remove all digital content referencing her name. Threat of lawsuit. Classic escalation. She's scared, Zoe said flatly. Camille finally sighed. This is a scare tactic, Madison. Nothing we posted was fabricated. You presented timestamps, original files, even corroboration from your teacher. You've stayed inside the law. I nodded, but the chill had already crept into my spine. The school's email had arrived just an hour before. You are requested to restrict all external communications about this matter pending review. I read it twice, then again. Restrict. Like a gag order without the courtesy of legality. She wants to turn you into the aggressor, Camille said. Shift the lens. Typical. My chest burned, not with fear, but insult. I'd been invisible long enough. Now that I had an audience, she wanted me muzzled. And then Zoe's voice came through again, softer this time. I found something. The screen on the wall flickered as Zoe shared a file. An old audio clip from a group call. Heather's voice, unmistakable, smug, and sharp. She doesn't need the scholarship. She'll never have the guts to ask for it back. The silence afterward was thick. Camille turned slowly toward me. This was recorded when? 2 years ago, Zoe said. She didn't know I was on the call. She said it out loud, I whispered. Camille leaned back, calculating. We can't use this directly yet, but it shows intent, that she knew what she did. My hand moved toward the phone on the desk. I tapped the voice recorder icon, watching the red waveform flicker to life. We'll see, I said, voice calm but cutting. If I have enough guts now. If truth is a weapon, then silence was my training. The podcast room at school wasn't soundproof, but it felt like a vault. One mic, one chair, one girl, finally speaking. The host, a senior named Liv, gave me a reassuring nod from across the table. Her fingers tapped the keyboard as the red recording light glowed steady. 3, 2, 1, and we're live. I inhaled, eyes fixed on the foam around the mic. Hi, my name is Madison, and this is the first time I'm telling my story out loud. I started from the beginning, not with Heather, but with me. A girl who won a writing award at 14, a girl who watched it disappear, a girl who had been told it was a mistake, a glitch, a ghost submission. I told them about the notebook, the song Heather sang in a school video, the timeline Zoe helped me build. I didn't name names yet, not until I needed to. Liv asked questions carefully, respectfully. What made you finally speak up? I didn't hesitate. Because staying silent didn't protect me. It erased me. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. Liv's eyebrows lifted. Something more? Yes. I played the clip. Heather's voice, so clear it was sharp. She doesn't need the scholarship. She'll never have the guts to ask for it back. The room was quiet when it ended. Even Liv, seasoned and sharp, needed a beat before she whispered, "Wow." I didn't smile. I didn't blink. She was right. Back then, I said, but not anymore. Within hours, the episode went live. Within 12, it went viral. Zoe sent screenshots, Reddit threads dissecting timelines, tweets from former students, anonymous DMs saying, "I saw the same favoritism. I thought I was alone." And then it happened. Erase Heather began trending. The university issued a statement saying it was reviewing new evidence. My inbox filled with press requests and podcast invitations. Heather said nothing publicly, but silence now spoke volumes. Then, just past midnight, a new message came in from an account with no name. Want more evidence? The story they buried is now the one everyone is digging up. The university's Great Hall had never seen a crowd like this. Students filled the rows, some standing along the back wall, others crouched near the stage. Cameras blinked red from the corners. Dean Halpern stood at the podium, his tie slightly crooked, his expression tighter than usual. I sat in the second row, my hands cold despite the late summer heat. Zoe sat beside me, gripping her phone like a blade. "We now open the floor," Dean Halpern announced, "for student concerns regarding academic integrity and institutional response." I stood. There was no tremble this time. "Why?" I asked, my voice clear. Did it take going viral for truth to matter? The silence was palpable. Then, footsteps. A man in a gray cardigan stepped forward. My heart caught. Professor Ellington. He had taught my freshman seminar. He adjusted his glasses. I remember grading Madison's paper. It was brilliant. When the award went to someone else, I questioned it. But I stayed silent. That was a mistake. Gasps rippled through the hall. Before anyone could respond, another voice rang out. "I want to speak." A girl stood near the back, short hair, denim jacket, trembling hands. Heather told me if I reported her for cheating, she'd make sure I never graduated. So I backed off. Murmurs turned to murmurs of shock. Dean Halpern cleared his throat. "Enough." "No," I interrupted. "This is what truth looks like. Messy, uncomfortable, long overdue." A pause. Then Dean Halpern turned to the microphone. "In light of recent evidence and testimonies, the board has decided to launch an independent ethics panel to investigate all claims thoroughly." Applause. Shouts of "finally" and "about time." I sat down. Zoe squeezed my hand under the table. For a moment, I let myself breathe. And then, Zoe's phone buzzed. She turned it toward me. A video, just posted, of Heather, hair loose around her face, eyes red from tears. The caption, "I'm a victim too. You don't know the whole story." I watched in silence as Heather looked into the camera and whispered, This witch hunt is ruining my life. I didn't blink. They say the truth sets you free. But sometimes it drags out the parts others tried hardest to hide. A lie dressed in tears is still a lie. The room was colder than I expected. Fluorescent lights humming softly above, every surface too clean, too clinical. A placard on the wall read, "Internal Disciplinary Hearing, Recording in Progress." Heather sat across from me, flanked by a legal advisor and an expression that flickered between confusion and charm. The same smile she used to get out of broken vases and stolen books. But this wasn't our childhood kitchen. This was a hearing, and I wasn't alone. Zoe sat behind me, notebook open, calm as steel. The chairwoman of the independent panel, Professor Alvarez, adjusted her glasses. "Miss Simmons, do you acknowledge receiving the accusation documents in full?" Heather sniffled. "I received them, but I don't remember everything. It was years ago." A pause. "You were 17, Professor Alvarez said evenly. Heather shifted. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." I took a deep breath and stood. I placed the printed article, the original version with my name, date stamped, on the table. "This," I said, "is the piece that won the writing award. Only my submission predates hers by exactly 3 hours and 12 minutes. Gasps were audible from the student committee. "And this," Zoe added, standing, "is a copy of the server log. It shows that Heather logged into Madison's school account that night using their shared laptop." She passed over the printed screenshot. "And finally," I said, pressing a button on the recorder, "is the audio of Heather saying I didn't deserve the scholarship because I'd never ask for it back." Heather's face turned white. "That's taken out of context." Professor Alvarez didn't flinch. "Miss Simmons, do you deny logging into your sister's account?" Heather blinked. Maybe I opened it by mistake. It wasn't on purpose." Another panelist leaned forward. "You copied her work, then submitted it under your name." Silence. Heather's lips trembled. "I didn't know it would go this far." Professor Alvarez exchanged looks with the committee, then turned to the camera. "Given the presented evidence, we must recommend formal disciplinary action against Heather Simmons, including revocation of academic awards and a permanent note on institutional record." There it was. Justice. Measured, clinical, quiet. And then Heather shot up from her seat, eyes wild. "She stole everything first," she screamed, pointing at me. She wanted to be me. She was always jealous." No one moved. No one agreed. For a long second, the room froze. I stood calmly, didn't speak, just looked at her. Sometimes silence says more than any denial. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the silence after a storm. The email arrived just before noon. The subject line was simple. Final decision. Academic ethics review. I sat at Zoe's kitchen table, her cat curled like a comma against the window, the sound of a kettle clicking off behind me. For a long moment, I didn't open it. But then I did. "Ms. Madison Carter, the board finds no evidence of misconduct on your part. All allegations have been cleared. Your authorship of the contested work is officially recorded in the university registry. We regret the delay in protecting your voice. Please find attached a letter of apology signed by the committee and the office of the president." I stared at the screen, letting each word settle like soft rain after years of drought. At that moment, Zoe burst in, waving her phone. "It's everywhere," she said breathlessly. "Check the news." She wasn't exaggerating. Local channels, Reddit threads, a tweet from a student journalist had been picked up by national outlets. Madison Carter, the girl erased, now remembered. And beneath it, my picture. Not the old one in Heather's shadow, but from the podcast room. The one where I held the mic like it meant something. Because it did. By 3 p.m., the university held a press conference. Brief, but pointed. The chair of the ethics committee stood at the podium and said, We failed to act when we should have. Miss Carter's voice was silenced by an environment that favored reputation over fairness. We apologize. There were no dramatic gasps, no audience sobbing, just quiet nods. Acknowledgement. Heather wasn't there, but her absence said more than her presence ever could. She'd been suspended indefinitely. Her scholarships revoked. Legal proceedings pending. Her lawyer, once so confident, now declined to comment. I walked outside with Zoe just as the sun began to dip behind the administration building. The air smelled like wet grass and asphalt. Zoe slipped her phone into her pocket. So what now? You won. I looked past the stone steps, beyond the parking lot, into a sky tinted in slow-burning orange. Now, I said, I write the story I choose. She smiled. Title? I grinned back. Let's just call it The Truth. Some endings are quiet, but they echo forever. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and new pages. I sat by the window, the kind that let in the kind of light that made even dust look golden. Outside, late autumn leaves clung stubbornly to the trees. A girl next to me stirred her coffee with a straw, upside down. Someone laughed softly near the bar. I opened my laptop. No pressure this time. No deadline. No burning need to prove anything. Just me. I reached into my bag and took out the engraved pen Zoe had given me that morning. It was smooth, heavy for its size. Along the silver edge were 4 words. Keep rewriting the rules. I smiled. Someone told me you'd be here, a voice said. I turned. A girl, maybe 19, clutched a worn paperback and looked at me like I was someone worth remembering. You're Madison Carter, right? Yes, I said. She handed me the book, a compilation of student essays. Mine was the first one. I read your story last semester. It's why I didn't drop out. She laughed nervously. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, I whispered. She left, red-faced and beaming. Across from me, Zoe appeared with 2 mugs and sat down like she belonged there. So, did the mysterious fan interrupt your genius? A little. Zoe took a sip and leaned back. You ready for your next one? I looked at the blank document on my screen. Then, slowly, I typed, for the first time in my life, this story is mine. I stopped, reread it. My fingers curled around the pen. Not trembling, just ready. The world outside moved on. Cars passed, conversations hummed, leaves fell. But in this small corner, time held still. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trying to win anyone's love. I was here, writing, because it mattered to me. And that was enough. She started as the forgotten sister. Silenced. Overlooked. Erased. But by the end, it wasn't just her voice that returned. It was the truth, sharpened by years of quiet, finally given a stage. Injustice doesn't crumble from rage alone. It falls when someone dares to name it out loud. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Sometimes it only takes one brave choice to change a fate long buried beneath silence. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you resonate with this story.